So I seen this posted on a friend of mine, my cousin's Facebook, about "I am Christian unless you're gay," an article that was written by Dan Pierce, who's from Utah, and gets a lot of flack, has seen a lot of flack given to his friend who is gay. And he wrote about his friend and sent a good message out, although I thought it would be a good idea to correct some things here. I think that it's wrong to assume some things about Christians, and I wanted to make sure that people understand what a Christian is. I know a lot of gay people who are like, we got to be more tolerant, this society is intolerant, we've got to be more tolerant, they teach tolerance, tolerance, tolerance. But some of these same people that are talking about tolerance, 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 are also hypocrites, just like these Christians who are saying, "I'm Christian unless you're gay," or who are acting that way. I've heard gay people express racial slurs. I've heard gay people express negative feelings about so-called breeders, people who produce children. I have heard gay people express a lot of negative comments and a lot of intolerant comments about other people. At the same time, they're teaching we have to be tolerant, we have to be tolerant. So let me just put it to you in my perspective, and maybe it would just be better to read to you what I wrote, because I responded with this to this article, which I suggest people read it. It's a good article. But I said, "I get the sentiment applied here, but I think that the application is a little unfair. Does being gay and teaching tolerance mean that you must always be tolerant of everything? No, of course not. And I don't think being a Christian or a disciple of Christ means that you must be tolerant of everything. The main thing that people fail to understand, and mostly it's people who have never been a disciple of Christ, in my honest opinion, are these things. Number one, being a Christian doesn't mean that you are perfect, and doesn't mean that you are any less human than someone else who is of a different persuasion. Number two, being a disciple of Christ doesn't mean that you agree to or adhere to everything that Christ taught." And then I say about Christ specifically, I said, "I do believe that Christ would be tolerant and loving towards someone who is gay. I also don't believe that Christ would lobby for forbidden gay marriage on a legal level. I don't think that Christ would spend time protesting at a gay soldier's funeral. But I also know that 100% of Christians have never lived like Christ, ever in history. Christ raised the bar pretty high. And Christ knew that we'd be hypocrites. I mean, if you look at his 12 disciples, all of them turned on him at the end. None of them lived like he did. And when he was being crucified, they thought of themselves. They protected themselves. They denied him. They became hypocrites. And, they just let him, take his stake alone, which was to die for their sins. And Christ knew that they would do this. The whole time, he called them hypocrites. He, told them they would deny him. He knew this. And it's unfortunate. I don't think that it's good to be a hypocrite, but I know that 100% of every human has been a hypocrite in their life. So, yeah, it sucks that people are in this mob mentality of, hey, we're different than you and you suck. But pretty much everybody does that. I mean, there's very few people that I've met that doesn't do that. And I wish there was more people who didn't. I mean, look at Gandhi. I mean, there's some people out there that lived a very righteous life and were very loving and accepting. But there's very few exceptions. And I believe even in Gandhi's life, he was a hypocrite. I couldn't point out any particular instance, but, there's people out there that live great lives and still, in some small or major ways, are hypocrites in some issues. And it's just too bad. The thing that irritates me about the Mormon Church and things that I have, blogged about is, they're this big enterprise, right? They take in billions of dollars in tithing, and they spend it on new enterprises rather than charity. They claim they're a charitable group. They have a non-profit status. They're supposed to be the biggest welfare provider in all the other churches around Utah, and even at that, they won't divulge their full financials to their members or to anybody else for that matter, because they're not required to by law. Every other church I've been to will divulge those full financials. But what was found in the Mormon Church is back when those sex scandals happened, the molestation scandals, and the bishops covering up different things for the church, and the church ended up being reviewed as to what their penalty would be, or their payoff would be, their settlement would be, and the judge had to analyze their financial records and what they take in and what they give out, and just to determine what the amount would be for a settlement. And it was found that the Mormon Church gives less than 1% of their tithing income to charitable purposes. The rest of it they either hoard or reinvest into enterprises. And that's one thing that makes me mad about the Mormon Church, aside from the fact that there's just no historical evidence for the Book of Mormon whatsoever. There's no archaeological, no anthropological, no linguistical, no history to support the Book of Mormon. But the bureaucracy of Mormonism is what irritates me. Now, you want to talk about doctrines and how people should live and how people don't live that way. Well, that can be applied to just about everybody, including gay people, including, atheists, including whatever. I mean, everybody's got their hypocrisy. So talking about doctrines is kind of a, not so convicting issue. But as far as the bureaucracy and the enterprise of these religions and the mob mentality, I think that's a much better topic to address. Yes, we should all be tolerant. Most of us aren't, though. It's too bad.